Do you sometimes feel like you're fighting against a power or a force that's greater than you, and you're trying to grow your business and grow your income, and everything you try or everything you think about trying either doesn't get done or it doesn't get done right? Well, in this episode, I'm going to talk to you about the tendencies that we all have that might get in our way. Hope you enjoy this. Hey, Bill Caskey back at the Bill Caskey Podcast. I'm glad you're with me today. You may have heard in some of the promos, we're doing another $1 Million Seller Challenge. It starts here on September 23rd. We'll make sure we put the link in the show notes. We'd love to have you. Day one, we talk about mindset, what the proper mindset to have if you want to scale your business, whether it's $1 million income you want or just something exponentially greater than what it is. Day two, we talk about lead gen. Day three, we talk about lead conversion. Anyway, the whole point is that we give you the entire Caskey philosophy in 1 week, 1 hour a day for 5 days. So if you want to join, make sure you go to $1MillionSellerChallenge.com. You know, I was thinking the other day that in my coaching practice, I work with a lot of people, and these people range in age from 25 years old to 55 or 60 years old. And these are typically business-to-business sales professionals or leaders or company owners. And I am always fascinated by how I can give a piece of counsel or advice, and 80% of the people will not take it, 20% will. Of the 20% that will, a high percentage of them actually benefit from it. But then when they tell the 80%, hey, this worked for me, there's still reluctance. And it may be the way I teach it. It may be the content's not right for everybody. It may be personality. But I've come up with what I think are some important ways for you to look at yourself. And because we all are in this mode, or at least presumably, if you're listening to this, you're in the mode of growth and you want to be more successful than you are, but you don't want to grind it out doing it. You don't want to work harder. So I consider these tendencies. And some of these are human tendencies. Some of these tendencies you may not have. Some you do. I have looked at these, and I've got probably half, if not more, of these. But I want to go through these one at a time, spend a little bit of time on them, and then if you want to talk further, have another show, we can do that. So tendency number one is we have a tendency to fit in, to play it safe, to not be the tall poppy in the field that gets chopped off because we're out of place in some way. Playing small is kind of the strategy that we've arrived at in order to not be found out. And I think that's a tendency that it hinders all of us, not all of us, but a high percentage of us. And so you might take a look at that and say, do I fall into that? Is that something that I do? Do I play it safe? And is it because I'm trying to avoid some kind of not fitting in? I want to fit in. Number two, to think we know and we don't know. We have a desire as humans to have the answer, but we also have the desire to believe we have the answer. And those are two different things, but a lot of times I find that people are not open to new information because they feel like they've already got all the information they need. You can call it cognitive bias, or cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias. I don't know what it is psychologically, but this idea that, I already know that. I already know. And the reason this thing is not working is not that, it's something else. And one of my favorite pastors is Dr. Myron Golden. He says, success is on the other side of knowledge. And we can say that about a lot of things. Success is on the other side of blank. Pick your poison there. But knowledge is one thing. And I think we need to be mindful that sometimes we kid ourselves and we say we know when we really don't. And it's a tendency. I just think it's a tendency we all have. Tendency number three, put off the unpleasant. Procrastination. You know, there's how many books have been written on procrastination, but what it gets down to is if something's not pleasant to us and we feel, out of place doing it, or it's just something we avoid, it's because we have a fear of that. And think about it in your profession, in the sales profession or in the business profession. Maybe you're a leader and you are putting off the inevitable of letting somebody go or putting them on some kind of performance plan or having a serious discussion with them. You put it off because it's unpleasant. So we've got to, in many ways, if we have this tendency, which this is one of my core tendencies, we have to embrace the suck, embrace the pain, and do it and see what happens on the other side of that. Because almost always on the other side of that is a new vista. It's a new opportunity. It's pleasure. It's inspiration. Sometimes you'll have a difficult conversation with somebody and it'll come back and they'll say to you later, that was the most inspiring, important thing that's happened to me in the last 5 years, just that conversation. So don't hold that back. Embrace that discomfort. Tendency number 4, to think of ourselves as more than we are or less than we are. And this is a difficult one because you might say, well, wait a minute, this is two sides of the same coin. But to not have the skills and have the ambition, I think of myself as better than I am. I'm really not that good at this thing, but I think of myself because I've been told by my peers and my parents that I'm really good at this, but I'm really not. You see it on, talent shows and things like that. Is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for a big fall. To not think of yourself as good as you really are, you have the skill, but don't have the ambition, sets us up for a life of mediocrity and lack of potential. And I don't think either one of those things is good. So the question is, how do you thread the needle and how do you really understand what you're good at, what you're not good at, where your ambition level is? I think you just have to study yourself. You have to become so aware when you get ready to make a decision to do or to not do something, where that decision originates. Every decision in our life originates at a place. It may originate from a place of fear, it may originate from a place of, I don't want to outperform my dad or my mom or my sister and brother, or it could be a lot of different things. But if we're not conscious of where that comes from, then we will see ourselves as either more than or less than. Tendency number 5 is to do, not to plan. Now, I know some people spend all their time planning and not much time doing. I don't think that's the case for most of my listeners. I think there's a whole bias for action and there's a bias to do. But I often feel like the tendency to do should sometimes wait until we have a strategy and have a plan. We just talked about this on the Advanced Selling podcast here a couple of weeks ago, and that is sometimes doing nothing and just looking at the situation and planning out your attack or your strategy is a better move than just going and making the call. And we've all had managers who we say, well, we got 5 target accounts. Well, go give them a call, invite them to breakfast. And it always feels like, well, wait a minute. Is that really the best strategy? Inviting them to breakfast and having a meeting with them before I'm really comfortable and aware of what their issues are or what the problems in theirs. I mean, this idea of just go act is sometimes the wrong attitude. Now, there's the other side of that, which is I plan and I never act. I don't think you're like that. I think sometimes our tendency is we just don't plan enough. Tendency number 6 is we have a desire to seek approval. We all do it. We sometimes know we're doing it. Sometimes we don't. But we all have this gene, because we are social creatures, that we want to be approved of by our loved ones, by our neighbors, by our friends, by our colleagues, by our customers. We don't like the idea of being disapproved of. And yet, that also is a recipe for mediocrity. And I will be honest with you here. I have always had this. I've always had this. I go through stages of it. Sometimes it's a serious issue. Sometimes it's not. But I try to be mindful that sometimes when I put something off, when I procrastinate, whether it's shooting a video like this or launching a new program, that I am often just burdened with this. What are people going to think? What are people going to think? And of course, we've always been told, well, they're not thinking. They're not really thinking of me or you, and they're not. But that doesn't mean that this is some kind of a sickness, this desire for approval. What we have to do, I think, to remedy this or to start to remedy is just to understand that that our intention can't be to seek approval. Our intention has to be about the customer or the audience or the end result that we're trying to achieve by doing the thing. The approval or the non-approval is just a sideshow. So if we can get rid of it being the show and just have it be just a sideshow in the circus, and our real show is how can I help my customer, I think we'll be able to burst through that pretty easily. Tendency number 7, we have a tendency to avoid ridicule, embarrassment, pain. I can remember when I was in, I think it was 4th or 5th grade, and we were in speech class. I think it was mandatory speech class, and we had to give a speech on a technology that we really liked. And I loved tape recorders back then. So I gave mine on a Panasonic. I can even remember, I don't know what the model number was, but I remember I was so petrified, and I'd watch people go in front of me that basically broke out in hives and tears because they were so embarrassed about being up in front of somebody. And I didn't know if I thought I would have to slither away like a serpent from that experience. I knew I needed to do it, but I was very conscious of the ridicule and embarrassment that I feared might come as a result. I didn't know at the time. I didn't think these people are not going to be thinking about this 2 hours from now, and they weren't. I would have been. So I think a lot of times we just have to realize that, you know what, if we are embarrassed, it's just growth. It's just personal growth. Maybe being embarrassed is a good thing because we find that we need to change our approach or change our mindset or do a deep meditation before we get up and speak. And I see this happening with a lot of salespeople too, is when you have a presentation or you have something or you're getting up in front of somebody, it can be unnerving. And the problem is then we become somebody other than ourselves. And we wear this badge and we're different. I want you to be the same person. I want you to be the same person in front of people as you are here. You might talk a little louder, but I don't want you to put on any kind of a shield. I just don't think shields are like prisons that we build to keep people out and it keeps us in. Tendency number 8, we avoid our dark side. We all have one or several. Sometimes that dark side can erupt in anger. Sometimes it can erupt in criminality, although most of you listening are not that. It's not that kind of dark. Sometimes it's just the dark side of, I just don't want to do anything today. Or I don't like what I do and I don't want to do it today. Or I've always had this feeling that I need to create this thing or innovate, and I'm scared to death of doing it. That's a dark side. You have to admit that to somebody. Once you admit it, and this again, I've told you that I have some issues here. This is one of mine. It's not a dark side like dark side of personality, like you're secretly a child killer, baby killer. It's not that. It's just sometimes we have this thing this gut level instincts that happen inside of us that is not helpful for us. And that's what I mean by the dark side. It's just a fear. It's a deep anguish or anxiety about something. And sometimes you just have to get it out and release it and tell somebody about it. Tendency number 9, I'm still working through this one a little bit. I'm not sure it's hatched and ready for prime time. But this idea of where do we look for meaning? We tend to look for meaning outside of ourselves in external stimuli like money, homes, cars, anything that is visible to the outside world, we get a lot of meaning from, or we think we'll get a lot of meaning from, and then we don't. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I haven't read it in a few years. I need to get back and read it. But the question is where should meaning come from? Do we have a tendency to attach meaning to something outside of ourselves, or do we have a tendency to attach meaning for the good work we do and who we are as people and contributing and bringing value? And to me, that's a better place to find meaning. Maybe writing a book is meaningful for not only you, but also your audience. Maybe it's shooting videos like this. Maybe it's speaking in public about some of the trends you see in the world. To me, if we find meaning in those things, then we will do more of them. People will see us for a resource, and they will ultimately want to be around us or do business with us. That's not why we do it, but you have to decide where is meaning coming from in your life. Tendency number 10 is I think we have a tendency to avoid really exploring what's possible for us. And this kind of goes back, it comes full circle here back to number 1, where we talked about playing small, avoiding standing out, being compliant, fitting in, because we've all been taught to fit in like good soldiers. And when it comes to seeking our potential isn't found in the fitting in part of life. Our potential is found when we can come to terms with our assets, with those things that who we are and what we do well, and figure out a way to leverage those assets, get mileage out of those assets. And then and only then are we able to lift our potential up to where it could be. And I don't know that any of us really know what our potential is. If somebody says to you, well, yeah, I'm operating at right close to my potential now, I always feel like, really? Are you? I'm not. I know I'm not. And I preach and talk about this stuff. And I know I've got a long way to go. And sometimes I get in this thinking of, well, Bill, how long do you have to get there? But that's not part of the conversation. It doesn't matter how long it takes. The question is what am I doing today to work on the leveraging of my assets? First, the understanding of my assets, then the leveraging of them to get to that next level. We never reach our full potential, but can we get to that next level? Can we go from a D to an E, or from an E to an H? Can we just start to take small steps? And I don't think you take those steps unless you're really good at leveraging your assets. Anyway, I hope that's helped you today. I would love to hear from you about whether you think these tendencies helped you. I don't want to be negative about this because, but I always feel like there's things that stop us, and I want to address those things and give you some thoughts on how you can at least become mindful of them and recognize where they come from. I'll see you later. Bye.